Hey, everybody. Today we have for you podcast number 98. Today's podcast is titled, What Could a Steady Stream Do for You Today? Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. We are Dr. Pete and Sandy Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network, where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you are called to lead. So we always want to start by
thanking you.
Yes, by thanking you
listening and sharing.
Listening, sharing, subscribing. What do they say? I've been watching a bunch of YouTube videos. Smash the like button and subscribe so you can check out all the other videos. Yeah. Everybody's got their own little jingle about that. But no, in all sincerity, we just, we may not be reaching thousands and thousands of people yet, but those that we do reach, if we just help one, then it's all worth it. Mm-hmm. And so we just appreciate you being a part of the process, and we're slowly encroaching upon episode number 100. And I know we have some loyal listeners out there. So shout out to all you loyal listeners. You know who you are, because you are not only listening, but you're also commenting, whether it's online that you comment or in person when you see us face to face, our friends, family, practice members. We appreciate you and love you all.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. So yeah, let's on with the show. Today's title, we just came up with it about 2 seconds before we started recording. And what could a steady stream do for you today? And that's one of our last points. We'll get to that in a minute. And our pastor used it as a metaphor in church on Sunday. So I think it's worth revisiting. It's such a good topic. But point number one that we're going to start off with has to do with a lot of differences between people. And I've often heard people describe this concept. And if you want to share the concept or share the title or the point.
Well, the point is camping or climbing.
Yeah. And some people are just born campers, and some people are born climbers. And you may be a bit of both, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're all wired a little differently. God made us differently. Man and woman, we're totally different, which is a good thing. Very good thing. And my wife and I have been kind of like going a little back and forth about this. We had a good conversation about this morning, because she was feeling very uneasy about something that I have embarked upon doing. I've initiated this next thing that I'm working on. It's one of the projects that I've been undertaking. And I like projects.
You do?
Yeah, I like projects. Sandy, on the other hand, likes when my projects are over with. She likes when they're completed. And we just tore down our garage at our camp, and we're going to build a new garage. And so I love that project. I've been in the planning stages, constantly watching videos about building and construction and getting great ideas, and working through the process of building permits and doing the work that's involved in climbing the mountain of building a structure. Mm-hmm. So some people are just wired that way to go out and to build and to create things, whether it's creating a business, whether it's creating an invention or a product, whatever it might be that you're just like really excited about getting it over the finish line, right? And then you have the other people that are really good at like camping. And this is not a derogatory thing. It's, if you are more of a camper, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But at the same time, we're never meant to camp and be the same and never change.
Right.
So camping, there's a time and a place for camping, but eventually your resources run thin and it's time to move. Mm-hmm. So if you think about scaling a mountain, think of it that way. You may climb all day long, but at the end of the day, you need a place to sleep. You need a place to have a meal. You need a place to relax and let your body recharge. And Sandy is a fantastic wife. She's a fantastic mother, a fantastic Gigi or grandmother, and she also is a very good cook, and she's a very good homemaker. So I'm really great at building the house. She's really great at making it a home. I think that could be a country song. It actually might be a country song. But I guess the point is that we, in a marriage, it works really well together because you need to have a balance. You need to have somebody that's good at the climbing, and you need to have somebody that's good at setting up camp and doing the camping.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Well, and we had a really healthy conversation about it this morning. And because, Pete's jumping into this next project, and I'm still like, oh, we barely are wrapping up this other thing, and so to me, I had to, share with him I'm a little bit stretched out of my comfort with this, and we talked about it, and it's good to just express that for me and for both of us. And yeah, I'm more of that nurturer, like to have things complete and steady, right? And so it takes me a bit longer to feel like, okay, we've wrapped this other project up, and now it takes me a little longer to get ready for the next one. So definitely balance in that. And I recognize, like, I need Pete's personality and drive in that to move our family forward and in all of in the areas of our family life and our personal life. So it's a good balance if you can find that, and talk about it in your marriages and your relationships.
Yeah, you said a couple of things there, but one of the things that I made me think of is, like, you said you need me for that, but I need her. I need her to, like...
Well, both, right?
Yeah, well, I know, but I
balance.
was just going to say, like, I need you to put the brakes on sometimes because it causes me to stop and think instead of just charging ahead blindly or without, throwing caution to the wind. I've been very much known to do that, to just throw caution to the wind and go take chances and risks. And as a result of that, you can get, you can mess up. And so listening to the person that wants to camp longer is not always a bad thing. So I trust that, and I very much like to be in tune with her emotions on that, because I noticed, how are you feeling this morning?
Better after we talk.
Yeah, but before that, were you, what would you say how would you describe your emotions?
Uncertain, I guess. Well, I guess because then I'm thinking of dynamics. So if it takes time and energy, right, to jump into another project and discipline, and so then I'm like, well, where does that time come from? It comes away from something else, and so I was thinking of all of the things that would have to adjust, I guess. So I wasn't at peace with it, but after we talked it out and looked at it more strategically from both of our standpoint, then I feel better about it.
Right. And so, like, yeah, she thinks about some of the things that I don't think about, right? Like, I sometimes will not take into consideration some of the things that you think about, and it just really works out well. So, but the big thing is you got to communicate about it.
Right.
So, yeah, recognize who's the camper, recognize who's the climber, and have a game plan.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us on to point number
2.
And we were kind of talking about this one, right? And point number 2 is all gas and no brakes. So, yeah, that could be, I don't know. Which one would you say I am?
All gas.
Yeah.
No.
Well, all gas and no brakes. Well, that does kind of describe me sometimes. And yeah, I like to use the brakes very sparingly. And we won't go into any greater...
Driving even.
Yeah, we won't go into too many details on that today. But this has to do with all gas and no brakes can get you into trouble too. But it's good to have that drive and everything. And I think we kind of touched on it in point 1.
Yeah.
But that if you don't, use those brakes, you can really get off the rails. So what's another braking system, when you're using your gas, so to speak? And I think, to me, a time of braking is always happening in the morning when I sit and I read and, I spend time with the Lord, because that's my point of riding the brake. Like, I stop the car, right? I get out and, it's like you walk around, but when you stop and you take a moment to reflect, it really gives you an opportunity to think about the things that you're not seeing when you're always pushing and driving, pushing. We also, like to get to a point where everything's perfect, and if we could just get everything perfect and we get to that place, now we could just, everybody's happy, everybody's needs are taken care of, let's just stay here. And that's the camper, right? But then all gas, no brakes is also going to lead you to burnout and burnout. And I can do that. I can work so hard. I can work, 15, 16 hours in a day, not bragging, it's just a disease that I have sometimes. When I get on a mission to do something, I don't even realize how much time has passed. But, you can get burnt out doing that. You can really fatigue your body and things will start to break down. So it's not always healthy.
Right.
But for a season, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is because it's productive. It gets things done.
Right.
So,
and that's that balance again where, there'll be days where he's just 100%, 150% physically working on something, and I'll have to, remind him 10 hours in that, his body has just about had it, pushing it to the very limit.
I found ways to tweak that.
Yeah?
Yeah, electrolytes have really helped.
That's true.
This carnivore diet has really helped. Like, I just feel like I have way more energy now. So I don't know. It just seems to be really working well. But yeah, no, it's good because you really do. You're like, hey, we already ate dinner. You want to come in now? And I'm like,
Get off the roof.
I just want to do a little bit more. I'm almost there, and, but yeah, it's good to like realize, it's time to get off the roof before you fall because you're not paying attention or you're tired. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So that brings us to point number 3. This I got off of I think it's from Eric Thomas. He's a pastor, and he was talking. He's a pastor that talks a lot to sports teams. I think he goes more like by ET, and he was talking about how lions love to eat, but they like to eat, but they love to hunt. And what the heck does that mean? Lions like to eat, but they love to hunt. And if you've ever watched a lion hunting, they are 100% focused on what they're doing. They are not at all thinking about anything but one thing. They have an eye on their prey, and they are stalking it, and they're watching its every move. They're watching where it's seeing things, smelling things. They're paying attention to everything, the wind. And then all of a sudden they pounce and they attack, and then, they're successful. They have to be successful or else they don't survive. So they like to eat, but they love to hunt, meaning that they're fully invested in the process. What does that mean to us? In the sporting realm, it's the person that, he was really speaking out to the person that doesn't really engage in the process. They love the eating, but they don't really care about the hunting. So they like the prize, they like the end game. So they'll show up to the game and they can't even get started until they make sure that all their friends are there and see them on the sideline and take their picture and all that stuff. And they're, social media posting and posing and all that stuff. But the hunting part took place in the weeks leading up to that, like in the days when nobody was watching, like, what are you doing? And that's the part where, falling in love with the process takes place. When you fall in love with the process and not be so fixated on the outcome. And I will say that sometimes that's the part that I like. I know I like the process more than I do like the outcome in most cases. I find that I get more enveloped in the process than I do in the actual outcome. So like in a building project, I get so into like doing the process, and I like that because it's the same stuff over and over and over again until it's completed and it's done. Then it's on to the next thing. And you see that enveloping, just unfolding in front of you. And that's where, if you have a goal, if you have something that you're shooting for, like, it's great to have that goal, but break it down into the different pieces, but fall in love with the process, the work that it takes to grind it out to solve the problem. That's really, really important.
Well, and I think too, part of what you love about the process is the changing nature and the challenge. Like you're always, it's problem solving, and that drives you. You know, I think that things can get stale when they're complete. So it's that you love the hunt, the continual moving forward, improvement, learning new things. So that's
Well, it's activating your brain, right? It's way more cortical activity in your brain when you're constantly active and trying to solve problems.
yeah,
And that's a very healthy place to be. I watch a lot of these survival shows
yeah,
and stuff, and the guys that inevitably fail are the ones that stop problem solving and they just sit there and they just whittle, toys, or they make arts and crafts, so to speak, and they're not actually doing anything productive. They're not solving the big problem because they don't feel good. They're usually
yeah,
starving or
right,
whatever. They're cold, so they start relinquishing all their effort and attention to something menial that doesn't really ever help them. So they waste all what little energy they have. They waste it, and so then they don't survive.
right.
Right? Then they're out of it. So yeah, and yeah. Point number 4. And do you have anything else you want to add to that? I
I
don't
was
know.
just thinking, like, it depends on how you're wired. Like, I know for me, the process isn't a project, like a building project. It's
Mm,
more of relational. Like, if there's things to figure out, relational, or like in community, like that's where I see, myself involved in a lot of process problem solving. So it's a different, I'm just wired different. Like
mm-hmm.
you were saying, you're talking to some of the guys at church about this building project and they're like totally into it. And I'm just like, I'm not wired that way. But there's other areas where maybe some of you can relate. Like you're just driven in more nurturing, relational ways. So,
Yeah. Well, for example, like you always seem to know who has a need, and it seems like you're very in tune to what is going on in everybody else's life.
yeah.
Not like you're like a stalker or anything, but like you have genuine care and
Right.
concern,
Mm-hmm.
and you look for ways that you can try to help people,
Right.
and ways that we can contribute to making somebody's life a little bit easier. But you see that in a relational way,
Mm-hmm.
and you have developed very deep, strong, meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very good. But that's the difference between the two of us that
Right.
works really well, because that's how I meet people. All right. So that brings us to point number 4, which we a little bit hit on this, but this is a cool one here. Point number 4 is called communication breakdown.
Mm.
And so obviously this morning when we started talking, things were getting better and better, and she was feeling better and better because she got a chance to share how she was feeling, and she was very honest with me, and it didn't hurt my feelings at all. But was it hard for you to tell me that this
Yeah.
morning? It was
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's oftentimes the things that need to be said, we don't say because they make us feel uncomfortable. But those uncomfortable things left unsaid only get more uncomfortable.
Right. Well, and we
And
were starting to try to brainstorm today's podcast, which is deep thinking and working together. And I was in the back of my mind, I'm like, I was struggling with this. I'm like, I can't go there without addressing this first, like we need something that needed to be talked about.
right. Yeah, and it's funny because in the practice we had an issue arise the other day where it was like 3 things in a row. Just all of a sudden, it was the same problem that kept showing up and showing up and showing up, and the person that was most intimately involved with it said, "I don't know how I couldn't have been any clearer." It was the kind of the response with what they said. And I said, well, if you were really clear and they actually heard what you or understood and agreed with what you said, we probably wouldn't have this problem, right? And they agreed. But I think that was a little ego check for that person, because you have to own that sometimes we say things, but not everybody hears what we say, because maybe we're telling them instead of asking their permission. And that's where communication is really vital, is that communication is simply this: it is a sending and a receiving of information. And if you just send, but it's not being received, and you think they're receiving and they look at you and their head is nodding up and down, that is not communication. That is your what you're saying is going in one ear and out the other for them. Because maybe in the back of their mind, they don't agree with you whatsoever. So you have to have some level of agreement and acknowledgement that, you're receiving this information.
Right. They're verbally
They have
giving
to,
back.
or they have to repeat it back to you, or, do you agree to this? What do you think? Like put the ball in their court, give them an opportunity to send to you so you can receive. But then you also have to listen to what they say. You have to actually receive the message that they're saying. And too many times people don't fully listen to the message, and they don't always say exactly what they really mean either. So communication is critical, and it's a real skill, and like any skill, it is perishable. So with lack of communication, you just get worse at it. With more communication, the more engagement that you have with people, you get better at it, because you'll start to see that either they're in agreement or they're not agreement. And when they're not in agreement with you, when somebody doesn't agree with you, you get further and further away from them. But, it's just much easier and that's one of the reasons I like podcasts, like long format podcasts, because somebody can say something that you may not agree with on the surface, but if you give them time and you listen, they may, because if you don't agree with them right away, a lot of times you'll shut off. If we hear a word that we don't like or a word that we don't agree with, we often turn off our listening. And that's part of our like judgmental self that we pull out. And so what'll happen is that in a long format podcast, if you can listen to it with an open mind and not go in with like all this preconception stuff and prejudging, and let the person explain their side, then you can start to understand why they think that way or why they said what they said. And oftentimes you still may not agree with them.
Right.
But at least you have their understanding.
And where they were coming from with the point.
Yeah. Does that ring anything for you?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. There's times where I'm too quick to turn things off. I'm like, I just don't agree with, but we don't understand where the point's coming from. And once their experiences are shared, we may actually find some alignment.
Or value, right? Like I just look for value. Like, can it help me in any way? Can it help me understand somebody better? How they came to these conclusions. Okay. Now I understand where they came from.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That brings us to point number 5.
Investing at a steady stream.
Okay, what's that mean?
This was our pastor had given an example related to this in church, and it was really great. He talked about how we need to build up this stream, so it's not something that we can just all of a sudden think is going to be there and draw from. So it's years and years of development, of education, of pouring into. And he was talking about a faith that is this stream of faith that you build up over many, many years. And he went into how you do that. And you have these riverbanks that, are your guide, and they hold you in place. And that would be the word and the truth. And he said, like, you want those banks to become wider and wider, like this stream just broadens and broadens. And so that it's there when you inevitably come up to a challenge, you have this stream to dip into to solve this problem. And you can apply that in so many different areas of life, well beyond your faith. But that was the idea of this steady stream.
Yeah. It made me think of this morning we were having that conversation, because I really, really appreciate my wife's discernment, and I've grown to really listen to her more about when something makes her uneasy or uncomfortable. And sometimes it's that I just need to explain myself better, but sometimes it is truly something that I need to pay attention to, and it draws my attention. But that's because for years, my wife has been investing in the stream. She's been pouring into this stream of faith that through Bible studies and this women's group that she met with for all those years, like all of that investment and just continually doing that. Like I have my own worldly ideas of what I think we should do. And then, the Spirit leads her because she's been investing in this. And then she doesn't let go of it because she trusts it. And then I'm like, okay, well, you're not letting go of this. So I probably should pay attention. And so because I see this stream building and getting stronger and deeper and wider for her, what did that make me do? It made me want my own stream, so it became a testimony really for me to be like almost out of jealousy. Like I need to have that too. And I deserve to have that too. And you do too. Like as a listener, like your stream, you deserve a deep, wide stream too, to have such a deep faith that you can reach back and dip into when you're faced with a challenge or when you're faced with an obstacle, because you're going to be, it's going to happen, and, but it doesn't show up by accident. It's not like you can just like, oh, I've got faith. And then when something bad happens, you're like, where's God now? Well, God's been there the whole time. He's been waiting for you to have a relationship and read his word and study it and listen to the Holy Spirit because he's given us that. So we need to connect with that daily, regularly. And it just helps life become easier in so many ways. Not that your life will be easy, but like when those hard times comes, you could have hard times for the rest of your life. But with a deep, wide faith, you will endure it and you will handle it with grace, and you will walk through this life, and then you'll have eternity with him, which will be glorious.
Yeah.
So
Very good. Yeah. There's such joy in that too. Like just, it can be little bumps and they hardly stop you. It helps you to take things in stride. You see a bigger picture, you see a greater purpose, a greater calling. So the things that might have really rocked you off your path, just don't do that anymore.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's pretty interesting because I'm seeing it in some of the people that we know that they're able to handle this better because they're starting to develop that stream, that stream of faith. So we pray for you that you all develop that stream of faith. Don't ever stop pouring into it. Don't ever stop investing in that stream of faith.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing of a stream is it flows out. It's not stagnant. It doesn't stay with you. It just keeps flowing to everyone around you. So
yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Anything else?
That's all.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Be sure to tune in each and every week so you can stay connected, be inspired, and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations.
Have a great week.
And we will see you back next week. This is the most odd thing ever. Thumb wrestling. Oh, it got warm in here. Woo.